Hello, I'm Juan Enriquez. I hope you're having fun over there. I'm sorry I'm not there, enjoying a wonderful fondue and chocolate and particle physics. A couple of thoughts occurred to me after I looked at your questionnaire and what you're trying to do. And the part that I'm very interested in is the whole issue of how does technology change societies? And I particularly want to think about that from the viewpoint of venture capitalists. If you think of how many large U.S. companies you can name that didn't exist 2 or 3 decades ago, and I gave you a little bit of time to think about that, you can probably come up with 3 or 5 or 8. And if I asked you how many large European companies you can come up with that didn't exist 2 or 3 decades ago, and you thought about that for a few seconds, it might be a little bit harder to do. And the reason is not because there aren't great European brands, but because there's this constant churn of new companies based on new technologies that are coming out of the venture industries in parts of China, in parts of Korea, in parts of the United States. And 0.2% of the US economy is invested in venture capital, but it's 11% of US jobs and 21% of US economic output. So why does this have to do with refugees and refugee policies? Because this doesn't just apply to rich countries. Countries like Korea that had an income that was 1/3 of Mexico in the 1970s are now 5 times richer than Mexico. Countries like India that certainly weren't high-tech hotbeds when I was in college are now producing extraordinary amounts of really highly qualified people. And what does this have to do with refugees? Well, as you're thinking about these policies, a couple of things have happened that are really important. The first is that work can now be sent across borders because you can do virtual work, because you can do coding, because you can do call centers. So you don't need to move physical bodies. You don't need visas to be able to generate a lot of wealth in a place without crossing borders. The second thing that's happening is a series of decentralized manufacturing technologies, such as the ability to print in 3D, allow you to make things or design things in one place and distribute them, print them, fax them in 3 dimensions to another place. So you can now begin to build cars in 3D. You can now begin to design things and change them and alter them and send them across border without having to move across that border to be able to print them. And that is equally true in the digital world. It's equally true in the design world. So as you're thinking about refugee policy, often you think about, okay, how do you take people from here and move them over here where they become productive? But many refugees are stuck for years or for decades inside one country. And as you're thinking about that, creating an education system, a training system, a vocational system inside the refugee camps that looks not like American universities or European universities, but looks much more like the India Institute of Technology, that have the absolutely extraordinary parts of that camp, the smartest kids, not all of the kids, have this policy that allows them to generate enormous wealth quickly, may bring the whole camp up. And that's not necessarily an egalitarian educational system. It looks much more like soccer, where you have Olympic soccer players, you have World Cup soccer players, you have National Soccer Cup players, you have regional and team soccer cup players, and then you've got 2nd division, 3rd division, etc. Play the same game with education, play it inside large refugee camps, and those people can act a little bit like the venture capital detonators of enormous wealth in a short period of time. Anyway, that's just one idea, and I hope to meet you during the next meeting you have, possibly in September. Thank you very much.